Thank you, Chairwoman Lofgren. Throughout our oversight series here with the IG's investigation, we've had a number of specific disturbing trends that have been identified. Lack of training, inadequate resources, planning and leadership, absence of clear communication by that leadership to rank and file officers. They're all deeply troubling patterns that seem to impact most of the department's agencies and divisions. Most worrying to me is the lack of an acceptable, centralized, and dedicated plan for the January 6 events and the absence of a process for developing similar plans for future events. And it's particularly concerning with some of our Republican colleagues continuing to embrace falsehoods and conspiracy theories to cast doubt on the legitimacy of the 2020 election, and other such colleagues encouraging far-right extremists to bring more anti-government protests to the Capitol. So it's obvious that the Capitol Police have to have the capacity to prepare and execute plans of action to meet ongoing threats of violence and disruption of government functions on or near the Capitol complex. So, Inspector General Bolton, I found your July 30th report very troubling with respect to what appeared to be gross deficiencies in command and coordination, which seriously impacted the ability of the Capitol Police to plan for and meet large-scale events. Can you provide us with a, kind of state of today assessment of whether that ability has improved and what are the most important tasks that need to be accomplished to meet the next large event challenge?
I think if we look at the two most recent large-scale events that the Capitol Police encountered. The previous one that happened in September, they were very well planned. And as you probably have read, they did go out and hire a subject matter expert that was very well trained and versed in large event planning. And you saw the big difference by the planning with our federal law enforcement partners, as well as our local and state, as well as also with the National Guard. So we have seen that, and it has happened twice now where they've had large events and they have gone on and they have shown their ability to be able to plan for those large events. The only thing I would caution is let's make sure it doesn't go by the wayside. It continues, like I say it before, and it's people are probably tired of me hearing me say it, a continuous business practice. It's just, regardless of who's the chief, regardless of who's the deputy chief, these are the steps that we are going to take. If we lose the individual that they hired and he or she decides to retire, the next person can step right into their shoes and continue on with the process. So we're not reinventing the wheel. And again, that kind of goes back to having that cultural change and having a strong foundation of training, a training services bureau that is strong. And basically, I have said before, that's your training. And they're pulling the department along. So as long as you have a strong training, that's your foundation and your main engine train, it's going to pull the department along and keep them up to date and keep them moving forward.
Okay, I just wanted to inquire a little bit into your report on dignitary protection and human capital, and you quite rightly noted that the folks who were on the floor in the Capitol, despite the lack of resources and training, et cetera, really just performed heroically. I wasn't there in the Capitol that day. I was in my office across the street. Who's responsible for ensuring protection of the officers across the street? Is that the Dignitary and Protection Division, or is that someone else?
If it's in your office, unless you actually have a detail on it, that's going to be the individual officers that are assigned to that building, whether you're here at Longworth or the other Cannon or any other. Those are the officers. They should be incorporating, making sure your staff and yourself know in case of emergency where you're going to do and communicate. Well, maybe you just need to stay in place, shelter in place at that, but there needs to be that communication with the individual officers that are assigned to that particular building.
Okay. We had a little bit of a flip on this conversation, some criticism about the practice of identifying visitors to the Capitol. Do you know, you've been with the Secret Service, right? Are visitors to the White House identified?
Well, coming from the Secret Service, yes. The Secret Service does a complete background check and everything before that someone comes to visit.
And in fact, that's in a way to chill those who might want to visit for violence or other nefarious purposes, right?
Well, it's make sure we know exactly who's coming to visit. the president or vice president, that we're aware. You can also, sometimes it's situational awareness as well.
I'd submit that it's basically the practice in every major office building in this country at this point. So I don't see a problem with us having to identify who comes into congressional offices. I see my time has expired. I would yield back. Thank you.
Gentlelady from New Mexico is recognized.